Hello, I'm here to talk about our hearing journey so far with our currently almost 7-month-old baby boy called Rory. He was born profoundly deaf in one ear, which means he has zero hearing capability whatsoever on the left side, and his right ear is okay. The reason I'm making this video is I want to remember everything that has happened over the past nearly seven months. I don't want to forget a thing, and I feel like some parts of my memory are already fading in some areas, and it's become such a long story. I want to remember this for the rest of our lives, and also for Rory when he's older. I want him to be able to know everything that we did, and I don't want to have forgotten anything, and things may be helpful to him in the future. So that's one reason, two reasons why I want to make this video. Also, what we go on to learn throughout our journey about Rory and what's going on with him is so rare. There's very little information out there on the internet right now, and I found that really difficult. I've trawled the internet, spoken to people around the world, trying to find someone with the same condition as what Rory has is really difficult, and I actually still have never found anyone to speak to about this condition. So if this is you and you're maybe even in years to come, in 5 years, maybe somebody watches this and says, my child has been born with this as well, you can reach out, and I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about. So I hope this video does help others that may have this condition, or just have similar situations with unilateral hearing loss. And also for people to learn, doctors and science. I want everyone to learn from our situation, and for Rory to be helpful to kids in the future. I also find that, my dad always says that a problem shared is a problem halved. So I feel like if I'm offloading everything to the world, then maybe someone will watch this and say, I know a tiny bit of information that's going to help them. And so I feel like brainstorming as the world, the community, then it's got to only be a good thing. And I just want to learn more that can help Rory in the future. So that's why I'm making this video. Also, actually, just to say, I have so many wonderful friends who often ask, hi Van, how are you? How's Rory? And it's really difficult to answer because he's very happy baby, and to offload everything that's happened since the last time I spoke to that person is actually really difficult. And to what extent do I explain? Because if I had to explain what's happened since the last time we spoke, then I'd be just there typing forever, and I have a really, really crazy busy life. So this video brings everyone up to speed on Rory's condition so far, story so far, things that don't make sense. People are too polite to ask, when really feel free to ask questions. Nothing is unspoken about in our family. We just want to bring everyone onto the same page as us, and we really appreciate everyone asking how he is and what the situation is. So we want to share so that nobody's kept in the dark. Okay, so starting off then, Rory is our third child. It was a very uneventful pregnancy. We did move. I will say some pointers that perhaps right now don't make any sense whatsoever, but later on in the story will make sense. At about 7 or 8 weeks pregnant, we'd just moved out to Dubai, and we were living in an Airbnb with our 2 older children, who were 4 and 2 at the time, and no, 4 and 1 at the time, actually, sorry. And yeah, we were living in an Airbnb, and we moved into our rented townhouse in Dubai. And of course, at the point that it happened, actually my husband was away, so Ollie was away racing, and I had to move house entirely on my own, which involved completely emptying a container. Of course, I did have some help with people moving boxes inside the house. So I was about 7 or 8 weeks pregnant, extremely sick, and yeah, moving in the middle of May, which is pretty hot here in Dubai. So that happened about 7 or 8 weeks pregnant. Other than that, I had my easiest pregnancy with Rory. I didn't really gain too much weight. I didn't have the horrendous fluid retention I've had in the past. I don't know if maybe that means something now looking back, but generally it was okay. Yes, I was very sick. I had all the usual pregnancy symptoms, but there was nothing to note that was unusual. We also did the panorama testing, which is a bit like Harmony, but more extensive. And that was absolutely fine, came back completely normal, and we didn't do the micro deletions because we were told not to, that we've got 2 healthy kids and don't do the micro deletions, part of that test. I believe that they would still have come back completely clear, so we wouldn't have known anything anyway. I don't believe the microdeletions would have shown anything, but to this day I don't know that for sure. So just to note, we did the panorama testing, everything came back low risk, you know, the smallest chance that you could have of anything being wrong with Rory, but we didn't do the microdeletions. And of course, looking back, wish we had, but I still don't think that would have actually said anything about Rory's condition, because what we go on to learn, it probably won't have shown. Medication wise, I just think I had some omeprazole and things like that. It wasn't, but again, maybe that means something. His birth was totally normal. I had him here in Dubai at King's Hospital, which is meant to be a sort of British run hospital, meant to sister with the King's College London Hospital. And I had a completely normal birth. I've had 3 uneventful births. It was a water birth and it was great. As good as birth could be, like 90 minutes, and yeah, fine. So nothing to note. Then newborn hearing test is obviously where we first learn about Rory's differences, and it came back fine on the right side, like clear on the right side, and failed on the left side. And we were told by the audiologist at King's, don't worry about it, it's probably just fluid, can be very common, it doesn't mean anything, just come back in a couple of weeks, the fluid will have gone and you'll pass the hearing test. We've obviously had 2 kids before and we've not had that, and I immediately got onto WhatsApp to all my friends, he's failed in one ear actually, and they said, oh, my kid had that. I think it actually happened to my nephew. Failed in one ear. Yeah, that's normal, that's like don't even worry about it. I didn't stop thinking about it, but I tried to put it to the back of my mind, and she said just to rebook in a couple of weeks' time. I think I did about 10 days before I was like, yeah, we can go back now. And she said when we got there to do it again, to do the newborn hearing test again, she said that we had the same result, and she said, oh, he's got a bit of a cold. He's bunged up. And I actually do remember he did have a bit of a cold. With 2 older siblings, it's just one of those things. So then she tried to convince me that it was going to be a cold that was causing this, but I wasn't convinced because it was still passing on the right ear. So then, you know, you start Googling more and more, and she said, come back in another 2 weeks, by which point he would have been 7 weeks old. I went back at 6 weeks. I think I did about 8 days, 8 to 10 days, something like that. And it was the same result. People will probably be thinking at this point, watching this, why didn't I do more or do something else? But you have to remember that at the time, your life is crazy busy, 2 older kids, and you are trying to convince yourself that everything is fine. And everybody around me was trying to convince me that he was fine, and he was reacting to noise. Do it again. So, but of course that was the right ear. I just want to also add at this point, had he been born in the UK, the NHS would have tested him on that first hearing test for CCMV. CCMV is a congenital condition that happens in the womb. CMV is a virus that is everywhere in the world. Most adults have it at some point in their life. You won't even know about it. It's like a cold, and we all have the antibodies for it. I think it's something like 60% of everyone will have CMV at some point in their life. If a baby catches it whilst you're pregnant, it's a problem. As soon as that baby is born, if it catches CMV, then it's not a problem. Like, has zero effect. It's just a cold and blah blah blah. But if the baby catches, I think it's particularly in the first trimester, it is so undiscovered still. There is still so much to learn about CCMV, and it's quite disappointing actually that we don't know as much about it yet as we should, because it's been a good few years now that we've been testing for it on the NHS at the newborn hearing test. It's extremely common for babies to be born with unilateral hearing loss, meaning one-sided hearing. And with CMV, it can develop and cause bilateral, so both-sided hearing loss, as well as other things that can go wrong after having CCMV. You know, other cells in the body, it affects the body in a different way, and there are some medications that can slightly limit the further damage that can be caused with these antiviral medications. Now, I'm not an expert on CCMV. I felt like I was for a short while because I started diagnosing Rory with this in my head. I thought that it all made sense, and it does make a lot of sense. But if you're pregnant now, watching this, or you've just had a baby with unilateral hearing loss or bilateral, first thing you need to do is go and get a CMV test for your baby. The test needs to be done within the first 2 to 3 weeks of being born. After that time, it's very difficult to pinpoint whether it was CMV that would have caused the problems that the baby's facing. It can be things like low birth weight, there's often a rash, calcification of the brain, etc. So at this point in Rory's journey, when we failed that third newborn hearing test at 6-7 weeks old, we were sent for an ABR, which is to read the brain responses. So it's basically shortcutting the outer ear, the middle ear, and shortcutting the inner ear. It's going straight to see how the cochlear is working and stimulating that nerve into the brain. We did the ABR with King's, and it came back the same result. And Rory is completely asleep at this point, just no general anaesthetic or anything, just a newborn asleep, and you just got to keep him asleep, and you've got to stay really still and really quiet. So it's really difficult. But anyway, had that done, and he didn't move. The right ear she did first and came back okay. Not great, not perfect, okay. And then she did the left side, and she went up to the maximum that she was allowed in terms of decibel and the range and tone and frequency and everything. And then it came back with the left side a complete score of 0. Went back into the ENT, and of course you can see the doctors are worried now, and that concern kicks in. One of the audiologists was quite emotional. I was not emotional. I was numb. And I just thought, all right, okay, what does this mean? I was in shock looking back. The ENT quite blasé said, okay, so he can't hear on one side. Showed me a diagram of an inner ear. Said this, and this part here, the cochlear, isn't working. The snail's shape, it's not working. We don't know why. Probably never will know why. Probably a genetic reason. Have you had any family history? I said no. We've got no family history of any hearing loss whatsoever on both sides. And he just said, oh, probably just one of those things then. Anyway, I'll book you in August when he'll be 7 months old, and we'll get you booked in for a cochlear implant.
In the meantime, you can try a normal hearing aid and see how you get on. It might stimulate the nerve, but probably won't. But give it a go.
Anyway, he has congenital hearing loss, sensorineural, profound deafness in one ear. And I was in there for less than 5 minutes. It was a bad experience. And looking back, I probably almost rushed out of there in the end, because I was like, right, you've just given me this information. I don't know what it means. I want to Google every word you just said, and I want to become an expert on it. But at the same time, I also had the other kids with me, and I just couldn't wait to get in the car and drive away from there. I wanted to remove myself from that situation and sort of home it back, sit down with a coffee, and then just sort of understand what I'd just been told. I think it was maybe Ollie came home from another trip away, and we were going through everything and Googling everything, and Ollie's very good at speaking to people, and he's very lucky that with his job he travels a lot and he speaks to some wonderful people. He has some wonderful friends, life-changing friendships, that mean so much to us. And they straight away are getting on the phone and asking friends for help, and our friend's baby has got this condition, or have just been given this diagnosis, and what does it mean? Who do we know in our friendship circle, or have you got another friendship circle that has a doctor who's a pediatric ENT? Anything. So we put it on our Instagrams about Rory's diagnosis, and we had a fantastic response, and everyone was trying their best. And even then, I didn't know what to tell people. People had so many questions for us, and I just wanted to say, I don't know why this has happened. And at that point, it started to really, I needed to know what it was that was stopping him from hearing in that ear, and is it something curable? Is it something that we're just missing here? And if we just unblock something, then he'll be able to hear us. Or was it something I did wrong in pregnancy? All of this that was going on through our heads. And I just couldn't stand to be told, you probably will never know what it is that's wrong and why it happened. That sort of doesn't sit with me very well, or my husband. We're not those sort of people that can sit back and let something go. It then just became a huge challenge. It just dominated our lives to find out what was going on. A friend of ours put us in touch with a doctor in Cincinnati Children's Hospital. It was absolutely fantastic. Put cochlear implants into children. And they were saying, everyone was saying to us, oh, you know, at least he's got one ear that can hear. And at that point we were worried if it was CMV that he would lose the hearing in the other ear. So my heart started going because I realised that his age was actually quite old. Considered if it is CMV, we needed to get those antiviral drugs in him. We then also started talking to other people that have had similar procedures, and we started talking to Great Ormond Street.
We did trial the hearing aid, but it became pretty obvious pretty quickly it was doing absolutely nothing for him. It actually just gave him an ear infection, so that didn't last long, but glad we tried it.
I then marched into our paediatrician's office at King's. Didn't have an appointment. I tried to get an appointment on the phone, but I wasn't getting a call back. And honestly, I think I gave them 10 minutes to call me back, and I just said, you know what, I can't sit here any longer. I think he's got CMV. I am marching in there, and I'm getting answers. So me and Ollie dropped the other kids off at school, marched into the hospital, and just started completely. Ollie, very calm guy. I just started going crazy. The receptionist was like, well, you haven't got an appointment, so you're not going in. And of course that didn't go down well. So I start very loudly saying, you know, due to your neglect, you haven't tested him for CMV, and I need to see someone now. So whoever's here, get everyone. I was like, I'm sorry, I know there's a waiting room full of kids that are sick, but everyone needs to come out here now and sort us out and get us the tests for CMV. And they literally looked at me like, what is CMV? So I was really on a difficult path at that point, and me and Ollie then had to start doing a lot of research. And I said, you know, there's things like calcification of the brain, so we need a brain ultrasound. There could be problems with the liver and the kidney, so we need abdomen ultrasound, blood testing, like vast amount of blood testing. That poor baby had so much heel prick test. I think they were just filling vials of blood. And our paediatrician was wonderful, and she held her hand up and just said, look, I'm not the expert on this, but I'm going to become the expert on it. And she went away and she did her literature, and she really learned a lot. We discovered that Rory had the antibodies for CMV, but so did I. So I was breastfeeding, he was going to get the antibodies. We didn't know if that was the reason. So unfortunately, our testing told us that he had the antibodies, but it didn't tell us whether that had caused the hearing loss. We had to go off of all the other symptoms. There was no calcification of the brain. There were no abdomen problems. There was no, liver, kidney. His weight was good. His head size was good. In fact, big. Like, he was a very big baby. He was 8 pounds 6, 8 pound 8, something like that. Yeah, and he was 90th centile. He was tall and big, so that wasn't a worry. He had no rash. He had some symptoms that I was linking to CMV, but looking back, they weren't. When you compare them to a CMV baby, they were not symptoms. But of course, at the time, you start thinking, yes, this all making sense. We'd gone to see another doctor, another hospital, to get a second opinion. Actually, it was probably our 10th, 12th opinion at the time. And when he said, have you done a TIMS test? TIMS test is where it is testing the eardrum. So, yeah. Which I said, I don't think we have done a TIMS test yet. So he said, let's just do one today, and then you've got that ticked off. I thought, brilliant, love it. I love doing another test that we've not done before, because this might tell us that he can hear in both ears, like dream world. Anyway, he puts it in and he said, well, I'll do the right ear first, the good ear. And of course he puts it in and it failed. So he said, I'm so sorry, but in actual fact, I don't believe the ABR that you've had done previously is correct because your baby can't hear in both ears. So yeah, I cried and I think I shouted quite a bit in that meeting because he then said, I'm really sorry, this is above my hands. And I thought, right, this is CMV. He could hear in his right ear and now he can't hear in both ears. And when we explained all of this to Great Ormond Street, to their ENT team, they just said, come over here, like, let's get this sorted. So we said yes, we'd like to come over there, we'd like to get over to Great Ormond Street, but when, how do we go about this, what's the right path? And we knew at that point that the answers were going to start coming to us from an MRI and an IAM, which is the inner ear particular part of the MRI, an additional 20 minutes in the booth. I wasn't comfortable at this point doing any of that here in Dubai. I had lost confidence in everyone and everything, and I knew that if there was going to be a problem, he wasn't going to be treated here. I just had totally gone with it. Also, our insurance was not covering a single penny of that because one of the rules here in Dubai is that if you've got a congenital condition, i.e. you're born with it, it's not covered by insurance, which is absolutely shocking, and I'm sure it's going to change in the future. I actually naively didn't know that when I was pregnant. I thought whatever, as long as we're insured before giving birth, that we'd be fine, but of course that was not the case. So for anyone having a baby over in Dubai, it's worth noting. I got a call about 8 o'clock in the evening one night from the Great Ormond Street team, who had seen a lot of the results from Rory and said, can you be here at 1 o'clock tomorrow? I said, yeah, of course, no problem. Yeah, sure, yeah. It's 8 o'clock now, got 1 o'clock tomorrow, got plenty of time. Yeah, no problem. I'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And they said, right, we're going to do another ABR here with all of our testing and things like that. So great. I hung up the phone. I sat there for about 5 minutes thinking, right, how am I going to do this? I had 3 kids asleep. So 5, 2, and obviously Rory was about 3 months by this point, just under, between 2 and 3 months. And and Ollie was away. I rung Emirates because it was within time. So I was like, right, I'm going to book this flight. And I think I needed to use some of Ollie's air miles and stuff. So anyway, I booked a flight. I have never packed a suitcase so fast in my life. I didn't know how long I was going for. We booked a one-way flight. It was just about to be the Easter holidays, and it was about 1 week before school finished. So obviously just had to go, we're just taking Milo out of school. He's in year 1. Took Milo out of school and Lila out of nursery. The kids were in their pajamas because obviously they were asleep, having no idea that we were going to fly to England that night. I got the travel car seats out, got a taxi, got the buggies sorted, and off I popped to Dubai airport and flew back to London overnight. Got a car rental at the airport, just about fit, and luckily my parents were able to meet us at Great Ormond Street Hospital. So I could leave Milo and Lila with my parents. They then took them back to their house in the countryside, and I was a state, but I met the Great Ormond Street team. We went through it and we gave Rory some melatonin, and we did a sort of feed and wrap. So I kept him. I didn't feed him for hours before his ABR, which, by the way, is one of the hardest things to do for your baby. Like constantly distracting them, knowing that I didn't want to feed him because I needed him to be as awake and use up all his energy to have this big long sleep for this ABR test. So we get to the Sight and Sound. Me and Rory get to Sight and Sound at Great Ormond Street, and we give him a bit of melatonin and a feed, and he goes to sleep for 4 hours. And 3 hours and 45 minutes our ABR test took, which is unheard of, quite literally. But the team were amazing, and they said, well, he's still asleep, so I'm just going to do this test. And we just kept going and going and going. And then she got to the point where she was like, I've done everything possible. Got some really interesting results. And we couldn't rule out neuropathy, which is another condition. And we knew at that point that Rory had fluid on both sides of his ears, and that's why he's failing the TIMS test, but he can hear in the right ear. We just need to clear that fluid. At the moment, his hearing was almost like muffled, as though you're talking through a wall or whatever. So he was hearing things, but obviously with zero clarity on that right side, and obviously the left side, nothing. We stayed around in London for a little bit. Ollie came and joined us in the UK, and we were able to stay in some Airbnbs, my parents, seeing friends and family and stuff. And the kids could go to their old childcare settings, which was brilliant. And we could go to work, but all the while popping in and out of Great Ormond Street for follow-up appointments to just try and get to the bottom of it. We ended up going for a feed and wrap MRI at the Portland Hospital. All of this having to be private because obviously the NHS didn't want to hear from us, because unilateral hearing loss isn't a problem in their eyes because you can hear from your other ear. And they also would say that Rory is too young to bother doing anything. So this was all having to be funded privately. And we were on such a mission, we were just loading up our credit card, to be honest. It was just one of those things. How much is it? Okay, great, thanks. How much is it? Okay, great, thanks. Not even thinking about it. We were just on such a mission to get this sorted. So, and it was constantly like, yeah, we'll sort out the money later. Yeah, don't worry about it. Just let's just get this sorted now. I was telling Ollie all the time, we'll have an answer soon, and perhaps we'll get a cure. So, yeah. God, the amount of Googling online is horrendous. And all the while we are running a business, and we've got staff with problems and their own dramas, and clients with all their dramas and everything, which we always want to make the priority. And they are, because that's the way that, that they are our priority. So it's really difficult when you have to almost drop everything because you're getting on a train at 4 o'clock in the morning to get into London to take your baby for a feed and wrap MRI. But on the train on the way there, you're putting together extensive event spreadsheets and things like that. And you have to switch your head from that to this. That in some ways is a great distraction, but in so many other ways it's really hard, like incredibly hard and exhausting. And yeah, you already got a newborn baby, that's hard enough, right? So get for the feed and wrap MRI, and sadly it just didn't really work on the first day. The team that were handling him were quite sort of rough, and he was quite a light sleeper, and he just kept waking up. It's incredibly loud. They had these tiny little rubbish ear things to cover up his ears, and I left him. I did everything I could do to make it go correctly. And Ollie had actually brought some melatonin back from America for him, like infant melatonin, and we did the same dose that Great Ormond Street told us to do, but it just didn't work. So the images were really blurry, and if I've got some here, I'll add them. I then said, we're just waiting around at the moment in the UK. We should be at work in the office. The kids should be in school. It's costing us a lot to be there. We're paying, for a car rental that we just keep extending, and it's so crazy expensive in the UK. And luckily they managed to get us back in for a repeat MRI, another feed and wrap, and just attempted it again. Ollie had to fly away, so I did it on my own, and I must have just been a bit lucky that day, but we managed to get the images that we needed to get at the time to make a formal diagnosis. And that was all I really wanted at the time. I just wanted to be able to call Ollie and say, we know what it is. So we had the diagnosis that day, which is that we knew at that point that he did have abnormality, a malformation on the inner ear on the left side, and it involved minimum of two factors at the time. So it was IP2 and EVA, and the two things together, which is the enlarged aqueduct combined with the IP2, is classed as something called the Mondini malformation, or Mondini syndrome, or Mondini. It's called Mondini. You've never heard of it. Most people have never heard of it. ENTs have never heard of it. It's insanely rare. So that was really late at night on that day, and I remember really crying from relief that we had a diagnosis, but also I was absolutely gutted that it wasn't something that they could just do a little surgery and correct. I was still convinced that it would be, something's flipped round the wrong way, and if you just put it right, he'll be able to hear. Naive, I know. I was wrong. It's just not being formed correctly. So I then go on and watch loads of studies, lectures and things like that. But again, I'll watch like an hour-long lecture on it, and they'll talk about Mondini for about 30 to 60 seconds. It's so rare. There's just hardly anything about it. So yeah, it's not common. And the next day, Great Ormond Street rang me for a bit of a debrief, and fantastic. We went through everything. What does this mean for Rory? And where do we go from here? So with Mondini, it can be linked to some syndromes, which Rory didn't have any symptoms of. So for it to be an isolated case of Mondini, meaning that it's not linked to a syndrome, unilateral, obviously, as it's on one side, not genetic. We can't link it to genes, and I don't think it is ever going to be linked to genes. However, we are wanting to do genetic testing, extensive genetic testing. I don't think a sort of basic broad spectrum of genetic testing would show anything. I think it needs to be really specific, broken down from what we're being told. But we're told that actually it's very unlikely to be genes that have caused this. At the moment, we're just being told that he's got Mondini because of a complete random fluke occurrence that's happened between 7 and 8 weeks pregnant. And yeah, that kills me to say that, because I really want to find an answer. I really want to find a reason. Is it because I was moving house that week on my own and I was really stressed and barely sleeping? I mean, literally like 90 minutes, 2 hours a night sleep. I'm okay on little sleep, and I was so sick. Was it that? Was it the omeprazole? It's not linked to omeprazole. It's not linked to stress, I don't think. But perhaps somebody out there knows different, and I'd love to hear about it. So if anybody knows anything else on that would be great. So the next day, Great Ormond Street gave us a big brief, and they talk to us about, of the 3 other cases that they've seen one of those children did get meningitis. So he is at a much higher risk for meningitis. And of course, Rory, he is up to date on all of his vaccines now, and he will have the meningitis vaccine at 9 months. Being breastfed, he's had my immunity to meningitis, and also out here in Dubai, it's actually there's not that much of it, luckily. So yeah, meningitis is something that we have to be very, very, very cautious of. Is extremely high risk compared to other children. That's purely because of the EVA. From what we're being told, the meningitis can get into the brainstem a lot easier than in a normal case. So we've got to be aware and cautious of that. Then also our surgeon did say that with the MRI, the nerve he couldn't quite see from the feed and wrap MRI whether the nerve was perfect. So when we went to see him for a follow-up before we flew back to Dubai, he explained to us that he wasn't happy to recommend a cochlear implant as a hearing aid or help in life for Rory, because we weren't really sure that the hearing nerve was okay, and that is completely of paramount importance for a cochlear implant. So he did recommend a Baha, which is a bone anchored hearing aid, and a cross hearing aid, which is where a microphone sits on one side and feeds it into a hearing aid on the other side. So basically all sound would transmit then through his good ear. However, of course, that doesn't really help with the localization of sounds. So if you're, calling Rory's name, he doesn't know where that sound's coming from, which is basically what he has now with one-sided hearing. Yeah, when he's in his little walker, if you call his name, he'll just scoot off to totally the wrong room looking for you. It's adorable. So yeah, we went through all of our options, and at that point our surgeon did say, I don't think he's a good candidate for cochlear implantation, but try the Baha. So we came back to Dubai feeling good that we had a diagnosis, that he's too young to go under general anaesthetic ideally, and there's no rush now because there's no CMV that we think it's not a rush. So we're not under that time pressure anymore. You can relax a little. And so we took a bit of time to process the information. Kids settle into a routine again. Work was crazy busy. We had some big events coming up. We had a member of staff quit. It was intense. So we really just took that time to regroup, come together, and then we started again. So at that point, I started looking into bone anchored hearing aids, and Rory did have a trial, very kindly gifted trial of a bone anchored hearing aid. They're not cheap. I was so surprised to learn our quote came through to buy one was 55,000 dirham, which I think is about £12,000 to put that into some, for a tiny little hearing aid. I'll put a picture up. But when we went in and we fitted him with it, and I tried it on and Ollie tried it on, and if you've ever got the opportunity to try one, please try one. It just sat on our forehead, and it's incredible how they work. It's kind of like someone is speaking through a microphone. It's exactly what it is, really. But it's going to your brain. If you've got the headphones, the bone conducting headphones, it's similar, but better. We put it on Rory, and if I can, I'll pop the video.
He's not bothered about wearing it, is he?
Okay, so it's on now. It's on now. Rory! Hey, Rory! You talk to him while he's on that side.
Can you hear us? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is that weird?
Aww.
Oh, cute.
Is it a bit strange?
Is it a bit strange? That's good, you can hear.
That's what you should be hearing. Rory.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Can you hear me on this side?
Rory.
He's so confused, isn't he?
Yeah.
Aww. Rory. Hey. Hello. He's had nowhere to look. Rory. Hello. How are you doing? He doesn't know whether to laugh or cry, I think.
Yeah,
It's a bit of a
Should
shock.
we put it more? Should it be more on his left side?
Yeah! Can you hear us?
Wow.
Because he's always been super slow to react to stuff like that, hasn't he?
Yeah. That's amazing.
Well, that's annoying. Now you're going to be able to hear your brother and sister.
A lot better, yeah.
Oh, now maybe he wants to
Wow.
hear himself.
Obviously it worked very well for him because he had the fluid in his ear, so that was the first time he really was hearing us properly, hearing any clarity in our voices, and it was just the best feeling, and then he couldn't be without it. So then we were thinking, right, well, we obviously are going to need to buy one of these because it's a game changer for him. He started making noises, he was just smiling all the time and crying, like reacting to sound as he should have been. And it was just easy to take off and on. So it was a brilliant solution for him. We then thought, well, we'll give it a go to try and get this insured, this bone conducting hearing aid, before we commit to buying it. Knowing that also a bone conductor hearing aid, it was going to be a short-term solution. It was going to last until he was 4 or 5 years old, and then maybe he'll be able to have one implanted, or something better might have come out by then. But really the lifespan on this soft band and elastic strap, about 4 or 5 years. The next step in the process was trying to get insurance to cover it, and we went to another hospital here in Dubai, a fantastic ENT that we were really happy with. He looked at Rory and he said, I don't think a bone conductor hearing aid is actually the right thing for him. Yes, it's working well for him now because he's got a lot of fluid in his ears. He could see it just having a look in his ears. He said if you get rid of that fluid, that bone conductor hearing aid is going to be like not as useful to him at all, probably annoy him quite a lot. Because the right ear obviously is hearing. So if you get rid of the fluid, he's going to be able to hear so much better with the right ear. So he then suggested, and we said, well, we do need a repeat MRI to double check that nerve, but once he's a bit older, so it's 6 months. So we set off with this plan to have tubes fitted, i.e. grommets, to remove all the fluid in both the ears, fit the grommets, do another ABR whilst under that same general anaesthetic, and then he'd be taken to the outside of the hospital, still under the general anaesthetic, and go through the MRI with the IAM to get a clearer picture of the inner ear. That was done a couple of weeks ago. So Rory was 6 months old, and it went brilliantly. I was incredibly nervous. Rory did actually have a little something wrong with his throat when he was born, which I obviously haven't mentioned up till now because it's actually quite a common thing that a lot of parents don't even know or think about, but it's just they put a camera down his throat and saw that he had a little bit of this laryngosoma or something. I'll put the name up. Really common, no big deal, he'll grow out of it, don't worry about it. But it is a little bit of a worry with general anaesthetic. They obviously have to put the breathing tube down his throat, and it's the worry that when they remove the breathing tube, will that affect his being able to breathe on his own again. Anyway, that was the main concern. Actually, my dad flew out here to look after the 2 other kids. Bless him. whilst we were going on sorting that out with Rory. All we really wanted to know was that he came out of that general anaesthetic okay, and then afterwards we were like, great, we can start looking at the results of everything. The tubes went in fine. He removed the thick fluid from his ears. Couldn't believe how quickly all that happened. The ABR, amazing audiologist at Gargash. She's absolutely fantastic. She sent through the report very quickly, which showed that his right ear has mild hearing loss, and the left ear has profound. So same result really. Just we were kind of hoping the right ear might have had a brilliant result and have really good hearing, but it's got mild hearing loss. Even though his MRI on that side is completely normal. So we went for a follow-up with that doctor and that surgeon, and he did say that he thinks the nerve and the cochlear are absolutely fine. To have a cochlear implant, that's the only solution he felt was suitable, so he didn't recommend us continuing to purchase a Baha. So we didn't do that. We thanked him for his information, and we took it all straight to Great Ormond Street, back to our same doctors from before. They were fantastic. They reviewed everything. They looked at our MRIs and the ABRs. So the audiologist at Great Ormond Street read the report here and gave a fantastic, comprehensive report back. I love reading them because I'm just constantly in awe of these people. They're just so fantastic at their job and so passionate about their job, and they care so deeply. And the response that I know they're so busy, and they've got lots of children and lots of families dealing with lots of emails, and I just was very conscious of that. But at the same time, I think our case was so interesting, perhaps. They obviously knew that we were desperate as well. And we were just trying everything we could. So yeah, they told us that based on the MRI that we'd had done, where the images were fantastic, so incredibly clear, because he was under the general anaesthetic, they told us that we were actually in a good position for a cochlear implant, that the nerve was actually okay, and the cochlear, the shape of the cochlea is actually, although it is only, I think it's 1.2 turns rather than the 2.5 turns, which is normal, it's actually enough shape that you can have a cochlear implant. So that was fantastic. I say that was good. Everyone was like, wow, amazing news, like when I would tell them, and I was like, is it good news? I don't know. It's a very difficult decision if it's right to put this in your child, because once you've put this in, you can't take it out. And are we doing something that's going to prevent something better from being a possibility for him in the future by damaging, by putting this cochlear implant in? Does it mean that he won't be able to have something else in the future? But also knowing that we need to put the cochlear implant in now to get the best outcome. If you put a cochlear implant in at 6-7 months old, the benefits are apparently amazing and so much easier to recover from, and the outcome is just going to be so much greater than if you were putting this in, say, past 12 months. So we're extremely fortunate and lucky that we've discovered all of this with the age that Rory is. I can imagine how hard it must be for parents when they're getting to sort of 4, 5, 6 years old and then discovering that their children can't actually hear anything. Or, adults that are losing their hearing at 30 years old for a variety of reasons. And the cochlear implant is never going to be as good as it could be for Rory. So that is a massive advantage on his side. But it's still a very difficult thing to think, is this the right thing that we're doing? And I think one of our biggest fears as parents is Rory turning around to us when he's an adult and saying, why did you do this to me? Or why didn't you do this to me? You know, or didn't you learn this? Didn't you speak to so-and-so? You know, I wanted just to make sure that if we have done absolutely everything and spoken to absolutely everyone that we possibly can, made it almost my full-time job to get as much evidence and as much has as many opinions from doctors as possible, then if we're taking a solid average and then Ollie and I making that decision for him, then that's the best that we can do. And all you can do in life with any situation, we believe, is do the best that you possibly can do with the information presented to you at the time. And if it's the wrong decision, that's okay, because you've tried everything. So you think you're doing the right thing now, and that's great. So that's where we're at the moment. Great Ormond Street have said that we should, that if we want to go ahead with a cochlear implant, that we are in a go position to do that. It is currently the 4th of, it's currently the 3rd of August, and the operation is booked for the 22nd of August. And yesterday I had that letter through and everything. So they've gone through with us the rehab procedures. They've been telling us this is not something to be taken lightly. This is going to take a hell of a lot of work to get this. You know, at first when that gets switched on, it's going to sound like a robot is talking to him in his ear, and he's probably going to cry. He'll be really emotional, and it takes time, and you have to wear it all the time, you know, other than sleeping. You need to be wearing your cochlear implant all the time. It attaches by a magnet. I worry about it being lost or damaged. You know, we've gone through all the negatives of having a cochlear implant. It's discouraged to use, it's discouraged to do like rugby, for example. So then we're thinking, oh God, what if he really wants to do rugby? I'm 5'1" and Ollie's 5'8". We're like little people. I don't think that he's going to want to be a rugby player. But hey, if he does, we'll make it work. I'll buy him whatever helmet he's needed to do. And you can just obviously remove the cochlear implant, but you don't want to disturb the device itself, which is obviously implanted under the skin. So yeah, there's pros and cons to a cochlear implant, and it's going to be a huge undertaking as a family to go through that. Loads of speech and language therapy. I don't know financially how all of that, to be honest. It sounds extremely expensive. The Baha was 55,000 dirham or £12,000. The quote that we've been given from Great Ormond Street, this still makes me a bit nauseous. That's for one cochlear implant. I actually think it's not that much more for two. It's a 1 year package. So say something goes wrong with it, then you can have more surgery done, not for free, basically. All in that package. Yeah, we're like a normal family. I'll think about that another day, to be honest. It's mad that our insurance here doesn't cover it. It's mad that our insurance in the UK doesn't cover it. I've exhausted all avenues of that. And yeah, now that we've actually got a plan and we've actually been told, yes, you're going to have a cochlear implant, and yes, you're going to have it on this date, it's like next week, I'll start thinking about how we're going to finance this. Yeah, and then the expected outcome for Rory is that he with time, minimum 6 months, we're told, he'll probably be able to hear really well with that ear. And then by having that, he'll be able to hear from both sides all around him. So say, for example, he goes to step out in a road, he'll hear a car coming from his left side. Whereas obviously one of my major worries was constantly that he'd be in a loud environment, say a restaurant or in the classroom at school. With unilateral hearing, people think, oh, at least he's got one ear, but actually that is very difficult to hear, and you can't localize sound, so you can't zone in on that one person talking. All you can hear, I'm told, is just one big flat noise with no depth, and it would be really difficult for him in those situations. Actually, a friend of ours stopped Ollie and told him that he was profoundly deaf in one ear. He's a full-grown adult, in his 40s, and he told us of his experiences growing up with being told, oh, it's fine, you've got one ear, you'll be fine. In actual fact, he's spent his whole life sort of constantly tilting his head, neck ache all the time, sort of a bit too embarrassed to say, sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't catch what you said. So you're never quite following the conversation path in the same way, which obviously can completely shape your personality and your life experiences. And he wished that his parents had done something for him. Obviously, this is going back a long time, and knowledge is key, isn't it? Knowledge is power. So yeah, that's where we're currently at with our Mondini malformation for Rory. We are trying to get a cochlear implant done, and from there, I think it'll be a really interesting story to see how we get on and how we develop, how his speech develops. He's not really babbling or anything at the moment, so he definitely has improved since he had the grommets fitted. But he's obviously a little bit further behind than our other two children were. But that's, we've got motivation, and I will give him as much time as I possibly can give him into giving him the best outcome from this. And Ollie, of course, will be doing everything he can do around his job and flying around the world. After the surgery on the 22nd of August, our other two kids start back at school on the 26th of August. So you do have to sort of balance. We don't want one child's situation to then affect the other two children who just want to start their school year. So Ollie's going to have to fly back to Dubai for them to start school, and I'll obviously stay in the UK with Rory so that he can have the activation done by Great Ormond Street. And then there's the programming, which is every week for a number of weeks we will be increasing the volume so it doesn't just overwhelm him straight away with this new noise, and then it'll be a lot of programming and a lot of rehabilitation, playing sounds in that ear on tablets, iPads, and lots of verbal eye contact and everything, and speech and language therapists are fantastic. So that's where we're at. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask them. We're an open book, and we just want to help others in our journey. I'm sorry that this is probably really rambly. I really was just offloading all of my information on us. My main things is, if you're pregnant right now, please make sure that you do CMV test your baby. It's a simple cheek swab or a urine test, and if I was pregnant again now, the first thing that I would be doing when that baby's born, regardless of a hearing test actually, is test them for CMV. It's something that I think will be done as standard in the future around the world. Some countries right now are doing it, like Greece, for example. They just, part of the newborn thing, there, as soon as the baby comes out, they test it for CMV. And they catch a lot of cases. So then you start thinking, oh, it's not that rare, but it's just that it's not tested for around the world. So that's one of my main things to think about. And then if your baby's born unilateral hearing loss, maybe you're going to be the fifth case that Great Ormond Street have. You know, if Rory's the fourth, then maybe you'll be the fifth, and reach out and talk to us. Or if your child has cochlear implant, you know, even if it's a unilateral, if you're an adult with unilateral, please do reach out. I'd love to ask you lots of questions and share in our experience and our journey. And I'm sure that anyone with a cochlear implant can teach so much to others. So I'd love to learn, and please share your story with us as well. Thank you very much. And the next update will probably be, maybe, if everything comes together and I can sort all the details out, will be at Great Ormond Street. So perhaps I will do another video of that, so that we've got this memory forever. And I just hope that we're doing the right thing. We won't know until the future. Time will tell. Okay, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.